Hi everybody, Reaper here. Just a continuation of our ARRIVECAN app witnesses and stuff. We had Cameron Macdonald on here and Antonio Utano. Those were the two witnesses that Botler mentioned quite a few times in their in their testimony, uh, in their witness testimony to Larry Brock and his committee. Um, so I'd just like you to hear the opening of this next statement that Cameron McDonald has, um, and then we'll go to we'll definitely do the conservative questioning for sure. I'm gonna skip over the other stuff because it's garbage, and and then we're gonna go to one part where he's being asked about the previous testimony from other witnesses, um, and we'll cover that. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here we go.
Honorable members du comité parlementaire, I have submitted.
Members of this committee.
However, I'm going to add some words today because of some events of last night. There has been a concerted effort to portray Mr. Utano and myself as corrupt. The narrative is compelling, but it's based on untrue allegations. The falsehoods and innuendo have been plastered in the national press. Senior CBSA officials have distanced themselves from us. Nos carrières ont été suspendues.
Our careers were suspended. Our lives upset.
From Miss Simmons, someone I do not know. I hope you go to jail. Amongst other things, you are corrupt, greedy, a sorry excuse for a human being. I hope you are ashamed. I hope you seek redemption. These are all based on falsehoods. There was no cozy relationship, no conspiracy, and no fraud involving Mr. Utano or myself. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to finally present the truth, address the extraordinary allegations that have been raised by Botler AI, and to show the facts that you have been misled. Je commencerai par vous présenter
I'd like to begin by presenting the context of ARRIVECAN.
a national mobile application for Canadians to re-enter the country. CBSA's contracting authority, the finance branch, authorized the sole source, and PSPC negotiated the terms and authored the final contract. Our innovation team was given less than 5 days to pursue options. 6 companies were evaluated. GC strategy.
Do you notice a pattern here? A little bit of a pattern. Do you notice how all of these contracts are supposed to take months, right, for them to figure it out and to come to, a consensus on the person they're going to use. You notice how all of them are rushed and they're given a 5-day period to do this? That's kind of weird. It's just a little strange. Anyway.
Strategies and Deloitte were the only vendors willing and able to satisfy the requirements in the narrow time frame. I was not involved in the GC Strategies vetting. 2 options were presented to my superior, then Vice President and Chief Information Officer Min Doan. Min Doan specifically rejected the Deloitte as an option. Deloitte had in fact been my preference. As a result of the direction given to proceed by Mr. Doan, GC Strategies was recommended to the contracting authority. As the Director General of Innovation, the decision was never mine to make. Pendant 12 mois, j'ai dirigé.
During 12 months, I led the team developing and scaling ARRIVECAN until May 2021. And during my involvement, all task authorizations provided to GCS were met on time and within budget.
I provided a costing for ARRIVECAN, and it was $6.3 million.
Min Doan was the Chinese fella that was in the first part of the testimony for the second part of the testimony for the ARRIVECAN app, and he was on the hot seat for who made the decision on and who approved the money for the ARRIVECAN app. He said that it was his team, but they were trying to figure it out, and who made the decision on spending all that money. Well, We know he's lying now because Cameron Macdonald just came right out and said Min Doan made the decision, and he was the one who said that the other guys weren't eligible. So there you go. There's testimony right there. So it's looking more like this Min Doan guy is more involved than we think, anyway, for sure. But we'll see how he makes out in the questioning once the Conservatives get going and start to ask him some real hardball questions. Anyway, back to it.
This was shared with my colleagues and my supervisor. En ce qui concerne Botler AI,
With regard to Botler AI, their allegations are unsubstantiated.
this committee, they began to collapse. They told this committee they believed their chatbot would make them $26 million a year. Their disappointment has turned into a campaign of baseless accusations against Mr. Utano and I. The facts are, in 2019, Dalian and Karadix competed fairly for a general services IT contract. On November the 19th, 2019, I received an unsolicited, jointly branded GCS and Botler proposal for Bill C-65. The HR department was the client and the decision maker for the work with Botler. A feasibility study was asked for by CBSA that had 6 parts. There was never a pilot in scope. My VP instructed me directly to help them deliver an executive appropriate presentation. I advised my VP that CBSA would use an existing contract. The proper contracting processes were followed. PSBC has validated this. I have had an unblemished reputation in the public service for 23 years. I have competed openly for every single promotion I have ever received, starting at an entry-level position as a student. My actions have always been guided by a commitment to the public interest. The allegations have been painted are incomplete, inaccurate, and have done a misleading narrative. The reality, along with the accountability of the leadership of the CBSA, is that the result of my reputation and the careers of good public servants are being shattered. Je vous remercie.
I thank you, members of the committee, for allowing me the opportunity to share the facts openly and honestly.
Okay, so here's Stephanie Kusi. She's a Conservative MP as well, and she kind of gives a pretty good background and a pretty good description of what Botler said about Cameron Macdonald, who is the guy who's sitting on the witness stand, along with Antonio Utano, or whatever his name is. So, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that, but anyway, here we go. Let's get on with it.
Thank you very much, Chair. On November 4th, 2019, 2 young entrepreneurs, Ratika Dutt and Amir Morv, were contacted by Christian Firth of GC Strategies regarding a Government of Canada project. On November 30th, Firth stated, "I had a great chat with Cameron from CBSA, and they will act as fast as they can to get you a commitment." Over the course of our interactions, Firth repeatedly stated that the CBSA was very interested, said Ms. Dutt. Firth repeatedly communicated that Cameron Macdonald would need to receive benefits as consideration for his role and influence in bringing Botler, their company, to the Government of Canada. Firth stated that Macdonald had then CBSA President John Oswoski's ear, and that for Cameron, it's more than credit. I just want to be sure that he's taken care of. The principals met with Macdonald several times. During a meeting called by Macdonald on January 22, 2020, at the Marriott Spin Cafe, Macdonald confirmed over drinks with the principals Firth's statements regarding implementation of Botler as a CBSA pathfinder for the entire Government of Canada-wide implementation. During another in-person meeting called by Macdonald on February 6, 2020, which was also attended by Antonio Utano and others, Macdonald provided precise instructions and wording on how to pitch Botler to the President to ensure success. During the period, Macdonald continued to provide intelligence to Firth on internal high-level executive meetings regarding Botler that were above his pay grade. Macdonald provided direct instructions to be provided via Firth to Botler and the principals in order to guide interactions with other CBSA employees. Macdonald also assigned work delegated to him by his superiors to Botler for completion at the last minute. Firth regularly asserted Macdonald's influence and insisted that Botler provide whatever was asked by the CBSA, as Cam has a very big stick and can get what he wants. They know where he's going in the organization and how fast. Over multiple years of interactions with both Firth and the CBSA mid-management, it has become evident that conscious efforts are made by both parties to isolate and control the flow and narrative of information to the CBSA executive leadership. In this instance, the leadership is defined as the agency's president, vice president, and C-level executives. As early as November 2019, while Firth was actively communicating messages from Macdonald to Botler, as discussed earlier, Firth stated that the Vice President, Doan, doesn't know that we've been communicating back and forth with Cameron. Firth, on behalf of Macdonald, intervened on multiple occasions when Duff communicated important information with Oswoski that was targeted at the ministerial and deputy ministerial levels. Imagine that you are a young entrepreneur. You've been promised by your contact that the sky is the limit. Your concept, your technology can be implemented across the entire government of Canada because he knows the man. The man works together with your contact to create magic. The man who has contacts, who knows what he wants. The man who owns a chalet. Or is it a cabin? Picture now that you enter into what you thought was a contract. You'll work hand in hand to create your idea across government. And what do you have to worry about? It's the government of Canada. But suddenly, things start to go wrong. You complete some work. You complete some more work. But you don't get paid. So you inquire. You do a little digging, and you're concerned by what you find. So what do? You do the right thing. You file a complaint, because when you file a complaint, it will be taken seriously. It will go through the right channels, and it will be addressed, because it's the government of Canada. Or will it? So, Mr. Tanu, what did you do when you received the first misconduct report?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, the email from Ms. Dutt on September 27th was not a report, but rather an email. And it raised two issues, as I indicated in my opening statement. One was a delayed payment matter, and the other one was a concern about Botler's relationship with their partnership between GCS, Dalian Craddox, and Botler AI. Nothing more. There were no allegations. I've actually provided the email in this package for reference. In fact, I was aware of the email when it first came in and knew that my team was addressing it. And within 24 hours, we successfully resolved the issues. So much so that Ms. Dutt sent a follow-up email, which I also included in this package the next day, expressing her gratitude. And given the nature of the email and the prompt resolution, it wasn't necessary to forward it to my superiors or Ms. Gorman.
Then why, Mr. Utano, is Ms. Dutt saying otherwise now, that this was the first instance of her submitting that misconduct report in September of 2021, which apparently you turned a blind eye to?
So, first, I'd like to address the turning the blind eye. That's not true. The facts are right here.
Did you
in the
escalate
briefings.
it when you received that report? Did you bring it to the attention to the senior office? Pardon me, to the vice president, based upon the procedure as outlined in the senior office of internal disclosure?
We are basically out of time unless you have a very quick yes or no. We'll have to get back to it.
There were no allegations in the email.
Thank you, Mr. Utano. Mr. Jawari, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Macdonald, as a director.
I wouldn't normally include an NDP guy, but because they ask pretty softball questions, right? They're, after all, in that coalition with the Liberals. So, but this is Gord John, so, and he asked some pretty good questions. He's going to get into the resumes that were adjusted by Firth. That Firth is the guy who lied to Larry Brock twice. Anyway, about in 5 minutes kind of thing. But anyway, they're going to get into some resume adjusting done by Firth. So anyway, without further ado, here's Gord Johns.
So, would they have been eligible to perform the work for the task authorization given, if they had revealed the true experience that they put on their resume and sent once to Mr. Frith?
I don't believe so under the categories that Mr. Firth presented them in. I don't validate that. That would have gone through PSPC. It would have gone through CBSA procurement and a procurement team. I didn't see the CVs. I've never seen the CVs.
Okay. What gaps does this reveal in the process? Just trying to fix things here moving forward.
Yeah, I guess like when I think about this from a technology standpoint and a user of contracts, I would think that some of the gaps that may exist would be what Mr. Wood brought up, that if you don't have the people attest to their CVs when they're submitted, then it is possible that something could be done in between their submission from themselves to the government of Canada.
Do you believe CBSA, as the purchasing organization responsible for assessing, the contract securities programs funding, should have a role in that?
So the CBSA would have gotten this from PSPC. My understanding is that the CBSA does a secondary security check. They don't just take what PSPC gives them. So I don't think CBSA would have had any responsibilities in that regard.
Okay, given what you're hearing, and you've heard Mr. Frith's testimony last week, I assume that you heard that on Thursday?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that he's admitted to altering the resumes. You're quoted as saying, let Mr. Frith, let Kirsten do his magic in an email. Would you not send an email like that knowingly that he's altered resumes in a situation like this?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe I sent that in an email at all. I believe I read that for the first time in an article that was written that was written poorly. You might not be able to see this, Mr. Johns, but I took that article. I couldn't sleep, and I read out every single timeline that man quoted and represented it. And I just want to say to people, the CBSA did not. I'll stay here all day, Mr. Johns, so you don't need to worry about your time. We can give everybody 6 more minutes, okay?
No, it doesn't work like that.
We sat here. It was post-pandemic when we did any contracting at all.
Yeah.
When I was supposedly said that was February 2019, before the pandemic. I was talking about them being in a partnership, introduced to me as being in partnership and navigating through the complexities. I wasn't talking about anything nefarious. I wasn't talking about anything bad.
And I don't want to do that to you right now. I'm trying to fix this, and I'm really glad that you're getting a chance to tell your side of the story. Now, Ms. O'Gorman, she just wrote a letter to this committee. She's asked PSPC to temporarily suspend all CBSA contracts with GC Strategies, Cordex, Dalian. This is pretty serious. Would you agree that the CBSA would be sending a letter like this if it wasn't serious, if there wasn't concerns, real concerns that are being brought forward here? And now I'm not talking about your involvement, but there has to be some substantial concerns. Do you not agree for Ms. O'Gorman to write this letter?
Mr. President, I guess the only question I would say is, what has CBSA learned in the last 2 weeks that they didn't already know? The CBSA had the email from September 27th that had no allegations. There wasn't a report of wrongdoing whatsoever. They sat here at this committee and didn't defend Mr. Utano or myself.
Okay.
I would think the CBSA should speak for themselves.
Sorry, that is our time, Mr. Johns, perhaps in your next round. Mr. Brock, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So to both Mr. Macdonald and Mr. Utano, although you've not been sworn to tell the truth, when you attend committee, part of parliamentary privilege, there's a component that you are required to tell the truth. You are required to give us fulsome answers. So I just wanted to put that on the record because I know you have legal counsel present. Both of you have independent legal counsel, is that correct?
We have legal counsel. Same,
Is
same.
it from the DOJ or is
No,
it
not
private
private,
counsel?
We
no.
weren't provided
Not
with
allowed.
any support from the federal government when this happened whatsoever, so
Okay.
we had to go get our own support.
That was probably a very wise move on your part, because not only is the Auditor General expanding her review, which started off as ARRIVECAN, but because of the story from the Globe and Mail in early October, her concerns about the same players and the same government agencies, she's expanded that review. But more importantly, the RCMP are investigating, not ARRIVECAN, they are investigating the CBSA, all the employees, all the executives, including both you, Mr. Macdonald, and you, Mr. Utano, as well as other government agencies, the three companies at issue right now, GC Strategies, Dalian, and Coridex, and as to what truly transpired, as to whether or not there was some criminality. All right? So I can understand why you'd want to have counsel. So, putting that aside, you, both in your opening statements, you were very quick to impugn the credibility of the whistleblowers. I call them the whistleblowers, the brave two entrepreneurs from Botler AI. And you were prepared to actually throw under the bus the press, and particularly the Globe and Mail. So I just want you to be aware, sir, because you use the phrase a lot. Well, these are allegations, and I'm here to tell the truth. I'm going to give you the facts. What you need to be aware of, sir, is that the Globe and Mail that started this investigation analyzed thousands and thousands of pages of documents released pursuant to access to information requests that came from the CBSA. Globe also reviewed extensive documentation compiled by the entrepreneurs themselves, including contracting records and audio recordings of their conversations with IT consultants, and both you, Mr. Macdonald, and you, Mr. Utano. So we have hours and hours of conversations that are actually recorded. So in my view, these aren't allegations. This is fact. This is evidence. I haven't asked you a question yet, sir. Okay? This is my time, and this is how I'm going to frame the question ultimately to you. So I wanted you to be aware of that, sir. Okay? So when we go back to taking a look at why Botler would have the need to record you, it's very, very clear early on when you take a look at all the stories, is they thought it extremely unusual that it was the CBSA, you in particular, sir, who sought them out, and sought them out not directly by yourself or one of your employees, but rather a middle person, Christian Firth from GC Strategies, because their work previous to this particular engagement was directly with the Department of Justice. They had civil servants, they reached directly out to Botler, they did the work, they got paid. There was no middleman, no ghost contractor, like we like to refer to GC Strategies. So that I want to bring to your attention, sir. Now, you also claim that it wasn't you who initiated the concept of CBSA engaging with Botler, that it was actually Firth's idea. So, you know, Firth testified last week. Firth is on record saying that it wasn't his idea, it was your idea, that you had researched it, and you wanted him to approach Botler. So both sets of facts can't be true at the same time. You're saying something completely opposite. So who's lying to committee, Mr. Firth or yourself?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe Mr. Firth said that, and I think you can check his transcripts. I think Mr. Firth said that he reached out to Botler after speaking to a number of CIOs around town. He had talked to me and that he had understood that Bill 65 was important. At the time, there were news clips that CBSA had undergone a whole bunch of sexual harassment claims, and that's why I told him it was one of my priorities. I want to bring your attention, since everybody is talking
Thank you. I
I'm
don't
sorry.
want to hear
I'm
about
gonna interrupt
anything
both
else,
of you,
sir.
'cause that is your-
You
that is your
answered my
time, Mr.
question. Is
Brock.
my time up?
Your time is up, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Mr. Baines, please, for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I wouldn't normally cover a Liberal asking questions because normally they're softball questions like what flavor do you like of what's your favorite kind of ice cream. But The question, although the question is a softball question, he does a lot of explaining in this about the Mr. Doan. That was the Chinese fellow that couldn't tell us who made the decision in his department about the ARRIVECAN app in his testimony. So I'll play it till after that, and then I'll go back to the conservative questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Macdonald and Mr. Utano, for joining us today. You said you preferred Deloitte. I wanted to just sort of find out Mr. Doan's role in all of this process. He talked about, we asked him a question. He said, I have a team that makes a decision. And then I asked how many people are part of this team. He said 1,400. So I'm like, or 1,400 people making this decision? And then he said, well, there's 6 directors. And then I think we've asked for some names on who those people are. So, like, you preferred Deloitte, and what was the process used sort of to select GC Strategies, and what was Mr. Doan's role in all of that?
So I can start. Maybe Mr. Utano can help me. They're doing
and or the team that he mentioned.
They're doing an assessment. There's 3 or 4 companies, some of them big, some of them we already worked with, the CBSA, some of them are outsourced, some of them are insourced. I see one floating to the top. I'm like, this isn't good. I also see about 100 requests coming in. It's the middle of the pandemic. That's why we were only given 5 days to do all of the options assessment. HR is coming, commercial's coming, travelers is coming. I wanted to bring in some Clydesdales, Deloitte, to be able to help out. I worked in evenings with Deloitte and the partner, and he put in an innovation team, and I told them the same requirements that the technical team had to work with. They came up with a concept, and Mr. Utano and his development team came up with a concept. On March 24th, he sent the options for GC Strategies, and I sent the option for Deloitte into Mr. Doan. Subsequent to that, I had a meeting with Mr. Doan where he told me that Deloitte was not an option because of CARM.
If I can add. Can I add, Mr. Chair? Can I add to that? So the technical team, the Mobile Center of Excellence, looked at a lot of other options, but the theme around it was in surge capacity. They wanted to participate in the development. They saw that was a better approach and long term, and so they worked in developing this concept, forwarded it to me, which then I forwarded directly actually to my CIO, Mendon, directly, and then left it there for decision and reference.
So when you said they, who's they?
The internal team?
Yeah.
So we had a technical team. We had a very small Mobile Center of Excellence team who was just getting off the ground and working in mobile. And so when this pandemic hit and Public Health Agency of Canada came to us in urgency requesting this this capability for mobile to deal with the contact tracing, we had to look for options. And so we went to our teams and asked them for options. This one surfaced as a viable option. It was based on a few things, more than a few, but security, the ability to provide a secured, protected cloud, the ability to have secured resources, the skill sets, etc. And so when they took that all into consideration, a viable option that came to the top, if you will, was this proposal. And so again, I just forwarded it on to the CIO.
And then the
Well, it's sort of seeming like this Doan guy is the key guy, right, Mr. It seeming like he's lying through his teeth. So I guess they got to talk to him again. That's what I'd be doing. I'd be putting down. He'd be on my next witness list. That's for sure. So we're gonna go over to Michael Barrett now and see what he has to question him about here. And you know, they've established a lot of this, in fact, anyway, like Larry Brock was saying, right? They've established a lot of it. They've listened to phone calls. They've listened to all the audio and stuff like that. So they know what's going on. Like he said, it's evidence. It's not hearsay or anything like that. So I don't know. I haven't heard the phone calls, but I'm assuming they're focusing in on this Cameron Macdonald guy and the other fella. You know, just to Mr. Utano, because they think they have something to do with it, and they got a pretty good idea. So anyway, over to Michael Barrett.
Was GC Strategies named in any legal documentation for the work done with Botler, Mr. Macdonald?
I wouldn't be aware of any of the legal work done that you're referring to, Mr. Chair. I apologize.
In the official documentation for the project, was GC Strategies listed?
The only official documentation that I am aware of that I had privy to was a task authorization for a feasibility study. There was never mention of a pilot. There was never mention of GC Strategies whatsoever.
Was so GC Strategies was not named on the task authorization?
Neither is Botler, Mr. Chair.
But they were subcontractors.
No, on the task authorization is Dalian Enterprises and Caradix. I am not privy to or aware or provided with any subcontracting arrangements. I am not involved in any of the discussions that take place between third-party partnerships.
So you would never know that, were it not for the public reporting on this, that payment to Botler flowed through GC Strategies.
I left
GC Strategies then took a percentage for their.
I left the CBSA before any of the deliverables or payments would have been made. I wouldn't be aware of how the payment structure or their agreements are anyways.
On what date did you complete your time at CBSA?
I think it was May the 3rd. I got pulled over pretty quickly and I didn't go back to my official records, but it was around May the 3rd that I started at Health Canada.
So after Botler asked CBSA to stop payments because of misconduct, Diane Daly of CBSA demanded payments go through GC Strategies. Is that correct?
I'm not privy to those emails. I wasn't around at that time, Mr. Chair.
So you've said that you're not friends with Mr. Firth of GC Strategies. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you didn't have much to do with him?
I didn't. I've met Mr. Firth 3 times out of an office place in my entire life.
And you see, it appears that you placed a high amount of trust in him to deliver on a project that you deem to be of exceptionally high importance. That's the appearance of it. Why?
Mr. Chair, the only thing I can tell you about my experience and the only time I had worked with Mr. Firth before Botler was ARRIVECAN, and I can tell you that the consultants that he brought to the table delivered. And I recognize that not everybody likes the policies of ARRIVECAN, but we delivered and delivered and delivered. And that year that I was on, we never missed a deliverable once.
In fairness, I would say you delivered a very expensive price tag to Canadians, and you delivered a lot of Canadians into quarantine who did not meet the necessity to have been ordered into quarantine. They were illegally detained. So those are also outcomes for that project as well. We've heard one witness who was caught lying to this committee that was on full display, and we've heard assertions that there have been others. So we see that there's, based on the allegations that we've heard from Botler, that there's a network of people not following the rules, that they're breaking the law. That's why there's an RCMP investigation. And you've pushed yourself quite hard against this so that you're not associated with it. I'm very curious about the motives of everyone involved, about the people who would be lying. And so I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I'd like you to respond as quickly as possible, please. Was Mr. Firth honest and truthful in all of his presentation and responses to committee based on what you know?
No.
I'm going to circle back to that. Was Mr. Doan truthful and fulsome and honest? Was Mr. Osofsky truthful and honest in his presentation to this committee?
I couldn't say more than I don't know that he really represented or stuck up for the people that I would have expected him to.
Was Miss O'Gorman truthful and fulsome and honest?
I wouldn't think so.
Would you be able to detail for this committee in writing the areas where they were dishonest and not fulsome in their replies?
Yes.
Okay. And would you be able to undertake to provide that to the committee in, what's the standard time, Chair? Would you be able to provide it within a couple of days, 2 days?
I believe, Mr. Chair, you'll have a lot of it in my submission already, but I will undertake to do it within 72 hours if that's acceptable.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Macdonald. Mr. Kuzmirchuk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh my God. I can't believe it. Jesus. None of those people, except for the second guy, and he said he can't be sure, except for he didn't stick up for who he thought he was going to stick up for, they all lied. That's what he just said. None of them were truthful in their. None of them. Not one. Oh my God, man. Oh my God. It's looking more like the upper echelon here than the lower echelon. Like this Firth guy. He seems like the fall guy kind of thing. That's going to be the patsy and go down for this. It doesn't look good for him because he lied to the committee. He didn't lie outwardly, but he lied by omission. So yeah, oh my goodness. So let me cue this up and I'll get the next Conservative on because these are pretty softball-y questions coming from the Liberals and NDP and even the Bloc Québécois too. I mean, holy man, there's no outrage. There's no like sarcasm. Like they know all the stuff that the conservatives know. They should have listened to all of the conversations that the Conservatives have listened to. So there should be no reason why they can't ask intelligent questions like Mr. Barrett just did, like Michael Barrett just did. There's just no reason why they can't, right? They know they got them, or they should know, not that they got these guys, but there's definitely something going on here. Anyway, let me cue that up and I'll be right back. Now we're over to Garnet Genuis, Conservative MP, and he's going to level some questioning against these people.
Thank you, Chair. GC Strategies clearly got a very good deal here, so it really matters in terms of getting to the bottom of this, who made the decision to hire GC Strategies. Now, I understood in your opening statement, both of you said that Min Doan was responsible for that decision. Was my understanding correct?
Yes, correct.
You're both nodding?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Doan very clearly and very explicitly testified before this committee when he appeared on October 24th that they were investigating who, trying to find out who, and to his knowledge, they weren't aware who. So, to be clear, based on your testimony, Mr. Doan was lying when he appeared before the committee.
I don't understand, Mr. Chair and honorable members, how they could be investigating for a year who made the decision on ARRIVECAN. It's quite clear, and if they had asked anybody on our team, they would have said the same thing.
Okay. Can you provide us with additional documentation to support your version of events? And are there documents that we should request from Mr. Doan that would verify your version of events?
No, the only thing that I haven't provided and I can provide the committee with is some names. I won't say them here, but I can provide some names that can substantiate what I've said here today. And in your packages, I can pull them out if you would like. Okay. Mr. Utano can also pull his out.
We're at a bit of a disadvantage because they haven't been able to be distributed yet, and I understand the circumstances around translation, but you would undertake to provide to the committee in writing, but not in public, the names of individuals who can verify your version of events?
Yes.
Okay. You sort of implied that Mr. Doan wanted to make you the fall guy for what happened here. Would that be a correct interpretation of your version of events? That he made a decision and that someone somewhere decided that you two were going to be the ones made to wear this and therefore not supported by the department and made to appear responsible for the decision. Is that your version of events?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I felt incredibly threatened on that phone call with Min Doan on October the 28th. I talked to my old supervisor and then my boss on Monday and Tuesday morning following that. I think Mr. Utano can tell you that he had a very similar experience with Mr. Doan as well.
So you had also referred to a conversation that was relayed to you, and maybe it was the same one, in which it was reported that Minister Mendicino wanted someone's head on a plate. Could you just explain further why and for what and whose head he wanted?
That was my discussion, and that was the day that Mindone threatened me. The discussion started off with Mindone telling me that within the CBSA there was a lot of work going on to prepare for OGO. This is almost a year ago, and I believe Mr. Mendocino was not happy. Mr. Mendocino wasn't there when ARRIVECAN kicked off and when all of this was going on, but there was a lot of news about ARRIVECAN. Min was worried that either he or Jonathan Moore were going to get fired. So he was talking about somebody's head on a platter. And he said because Jonathan Moore had made a whole bunch of mistakes from an accounting perspective, talking about how much ARRIVECAN costs, it could go his way or it could go Mr. Doan's way because Mr. Doan was the CIO at the time. And then he turned, we were on the phone, but he stopped the conversation and he just said, you know, Cam, if I have to, I'm going to tell the committee that it was you.
Right.
He offered me the opportunity to say that it was Mr. Utano or tell Mr. Doan that it was Utano and myself, to which I said, if you do that, I will have to respond, and we ended the conversation. That night is the night that I wrote him the notes. I stayed up until about 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out how I could find some way to meet in the middle. And that's why the notes were written exactly that way, so that Mr. Doan could come to this committee and present without having.
So you're referring to the email you sent, and I was going to ask you about that. So essentially, you were trying to be honest. You were what you're telling us is you were trying to be honest, but also avoid giving the direct answer that you've given the committee today.
I was trying to give him something that he could work with. He told me he had never been to committee before. Right. I believe his first appearance was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He was very nervous about it, and I tried to give him some help.
No wonder. I mean, the implication of what you're saying is that he made the choice to hire GC Strategies and had some reason for doing so, and also that he came and told the committee that he didn't make the decision, didn't know who made the decision. And essentially, you're telling us that someone's head was going to be on a plate because somebody got rich, somebody benefited from this. Someone's head was going to be on a plate, and he wanted it to be yours and not his.
I believe Mindone made the decision to go with GC Strategies out of the fact that he had been told that he could not use Deloitte. Deloitte was in the timeout penalty box, so to speak.
Who told him that they were in the penalty box?
Very briefly.
My understanding is that that came from above.
Can you clarify what you mean by above?
So that is our time.
There you have it. That was pretty good testimony. Holy man. That was pretty good testimony. Jeez. Like I said, it's looking like it's the higher ups. It's all the lead people for Canadian Border Services and all these other people that are doing this and then trying to blame the lower ranks for it, right? And we're probably going to find out that Firth was perfectly did things perfectly legal from a contract point of view. He executed the contracts and all that sort of stuff, and that's probably what we're going to find out by this. But as you go through the lower ranks, you get to the upper echelon and who really made the decisions and stuff like that. And like it's already been, Botler already said it was Chrystia Freeland. They already said that. So there's no getting around that. She seems to be the minister in charge of this. The finance minister. Like, holy man, what the heck is going on here? The 2IC, a deputy prime minister, is handling this? Why is she into this? Well, like I said, I don't usually put in NDPs or Liberals. Sometimes Bloc Québécois, if they're asking questions and not blowing smoke, then I'll include them. Gord Johns is pretty good. He's an NDP guy, and he asks the right questions. More importantly, he gets the right answers. That's the thing. So we'll listen to his line of questioning, and you're really going to hear this Cameron Macdonald really explain it. In my opinion, swinging more and more to the upper echelon of all of this as the shit rolls downhill phrase really comes into play. So anyway, without further ado here.
Mr. Macdonald, do you have any idea why Deloitte was in the penalty box?
Mr. Chair, my understanding from the discussion was there's a big project called the Commercial, CARM, something about risk management, commercial assessment risk management project. I believe it's about $350 million or so, and it wasn't going well at the time. So I believe.
What does that mean?
I believe it was not on time and not on budget in terms of where the project milestones were supposed to be, and so the company had been put on timeout. No work was to be done, even though there was a global pandemic.
Mr. Doan threatened you. Exactly, can you clarify why he would threaten you, what the threat was?
So I got a phone call on, I think it was the 27th, from a member of his inner circle. I can provide her name and information to corroborate this. She told me that Kelly Belanger had told her not to call me, and that Min had been particularly directing his attention towards saying that I was the one that had made the decision that it would be GC Strategies, even though the entire team that was helping to brief Min Doan all the way had not said that. So when I talked to Min Doan the next day, he had already asked me to help him with the committee. So this is why it was a bit jarring for me. He was pretty upset. At times he was almost crying. At times he was almost yelling. He basically said that somebody's head was going to be on a platter, and he started between him and Jonathan, and then he quickly switched it to say he was going to say that it was me that made the decision if he was asked.
But he made the decision. Is that correct? He made the decision?
Yes, he made the decision. I brought him 2 decisions. He took one away and told me to go, and I went.
But he
knew it
came
was
to our
GC
committee and said it
Strategies.
wasn't him that made the decision.
Mr. Johns and honorable members of this committee, I have members of my team that came here to support me. If the CBSA had have even just asked my team, they would have known who made the decision. It was clear. Everybody in government knows that DG wouldn't have made a decision like that. And Mr. Doan, I don't know. He was the one that got a non-advertised appointment. I competed successfully in an open competition for my EX4. Mr. Doan, when he was asked that question, he answered it a little bit differently, and you'll have to ask him how he was promoted.
Thank you both. Mr. Genwis, I understand you're starting off.
Thank you, Chair. I suspect there will be general agreement of this committee in light of the testimony we've heard today to ask Mr. Doan to come back as soon as possible for a full 2 hours by himself. Is there agreement on that point?
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think probably as soon as possible, Chair, but we give you that discretion as always. Mr. Macdonald, I think it's very important that you said that Mr. Doan heard from above that Deloitte was in the penalty box, and that is why GC Strategies was selected. That phrase does include some euphemisms that I do want clarity on, though. What precisely do you mean by from above?
Doan was the vice president and CIO of the CBSA. There was only one person who was above him. My understanding is that all the VPs had been told that they could not work with Deloitte until the CARM project was back on track.
So above him within the public service would have been the president, but above that is the political level. So
I did not understand it to be a political decision, but if you're going to be calling Min Doan, I'm sure you can ask him what he meant.
Okay. Would anyone at the political level have been involved in these discussions, as far as you know?
Not as far as I know.
You weren't in rooms where they were.
I was in for ARRIVECAN. I was in one meeting with the minister's office. They asked me if it was secure, and they asked me if it was scalable, to which I answered in the affirmative, and that was only one meeting.
At what stage in the process was that meeting with the minister?
Very early, like very beginning.
Was that before or after the GC Strategies was selected?
I don't know that GC Strategies was selected at the time. It would have probably been concurrently when we were kind of going. GC Strategies was not brought up. Okay. No contracting was brought up. They just wanted to make sure that it was secure because we were going to be collecting.
But if they were asking, is it secure, presumably they were asking that in the context of a particular application or company.
No, it was because we were taking away paper and we were going to be using digital means.
Okay. It was sort of, I wonder if you could follow up on that point regarding the timeline. So, what do you mean by penalty box? You mean they weren't to receive any contracts? That's
Yes,
what penalty box is.
that was my understanding. Again, Mr.
Okay.
Doan can explain.
Yeah, yeah. It is sort of surprising to me that you would have this kind of informal process of companies being in the penalty box and therefore not getting any contracts, which means other companies get them automatically. Like, is this normal where sort of someone just decides this company or that company is not going to receive any contracts for a while, and we're gonna give them to whoever else bids?
I would say no, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't think it was normal at all, but I will preface that by saying this was like the second week of the pandemic, and
Right.
there was craziness everywhere. The reason that the sole source and the national security exemptions exist is for emergencies, and this was declared a national emergency. In terms of the decisions around why we could or could not use a particular company such as Deloitte, that was not my decision to make.
Okay, in terms of the time I had left, I do want to probe the point you referred to just at the end about, you said Mr. Doan got a non-advertised appointment. There was sort of an implication in what you said, and I would like you to provide a little bit more on that. Are there certain relationships he has, access points? Do you think his appointment broke protocol in some way? What were you sort of getting at with that comment?
Well, Mr. Chair, the only thing I can say is that it was alluded to or inferred that I had benefited because of ARRIVECAN at this committee, and that I had gotten a promotion because of my work. And I wanted to make sure this committee was aware that I fully competed in a competitive process that was open and fair, and that I had resulted as being in a pool, and I was selected afterwards. Mr. Utano as well fully competed in a process. The others can speak for themselves as to how they are selected, but my base assumption is that when I left the CBSA, Mr. Doan was in EX4,
right,
and he was promoted to an EX5, as well as others were promoted in the agency.
And just finally, to put a sharp point on the process of selecting GC strategies. So Min Doan chose, and part of why he made that choice is because Mr. Osowski, who was the president at the time, had told him Deloitte's a no. Is that?
I will let Min Doan answer for why he discounted Deloitte. I told you already what I heard from Mr. Doan. I brought my boss 2 options. I came out with one and the decision to go. I went. He was aware that I went forward with it, obviously, because we built ARRIVECAN and we delivered it. I left about 13 months after ARRIVECAN was kicked off. Mr. Utano continued it. Mr. Doan was the CIO for the entire time. When this committee started asking questions, Mr. Doan was still the CIO.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brock.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Macdonald, for clarifying your secondary residence. There was quite an issue last Thursday as to whether or not cabin, camp, tent, chalet. So thank you for clarifying that. Another area I want clarified, sir, and I've listened very carefully, and if you said it once, you may have said it half a dozen times, as well as you, Mr. Utano, in terms of being very unequivocal in your responses that it was Mr. Doan who was responsible for retaining GC strategies with respect to this Botler contract. And I just want to confirm that again. That is correct. That is your evidence, correct?
I will try and say it to you as clearly as I can, but I need a minute, and I will give you as much time as you want. I don't have a hard time.
Can you
to
reduce it to 30 seconds?
Mr. Doan saw the proposal that I sent him after I received it and asked for a meeting. Mr. Doan had a meeting with Botler and saw a demo. Mr. Doan told me to get them ready for an executive presentation. I have my notes there in there. The president, the VP of HR, the CFO, and others saw the Botler presentation. They were interested in it, and there was general consensus that we should go ahead with some work. I worked with my peers at the DG level to develop a statement of work, which was for a feasibility study, not a pilot. I emailed my boss and told him I was using an existing contract, and I sought permission to go ahead, and I received endorsement to go ahead.
Okay. Again, you and Mr. Utano did not specifically seek out GC Strategies to be the ghost contractor, correct?
No, we received a proposal from Botler and GC Strategies.
The answer is correct.
Correct.
How do you then reconcile, sir, and this is a question to you, Mr. Macdonald, a year and a half after you leave the CBSA, you write an email to Mr. Doan as well as other members of CBSA, Ms. Sabarin, Mr. Utano, and Mr. Bird, October 29th, 2022, and I'm quoting various passages in this particular email attributable to you. You asked me for advice on the key question of why GC Strategies, but I also think we are all grappling with who selected GC Strategies. If you're so unequivocal today, November the 7th, 2023, why were you equivocal on the 29th of October, 2022?
As I explained, Mr. Chair, I wrote that email to Mindone after I had been threatened. I wrote that email trying to give Mindone words that he could use at this committee.
Thank you. I'm going to caution you as well, sir. If you don't want to answer this, I can understand your lawyers are present, but there is some really damning information in this email, which in my view, as a former prosecutor, encroaches upon criminal law in terms of interfering with witness testimonies. You're actually specifically coaching them on what to say with anticipated questions put to them. I'll give you some examples. I will start by saying that I'm not personally familiar with GC Strategies during the time in question. If pressed, come on, we want some accountability here. Who decided? How did this company get a contract for almost $9 million? Who made money off of this? Who is getting rich off of taxpayer dollars? Mr. Chair, I stand by my statement, and I don't believe there was a single person, and I'm not actually aware of any rules being broken or wrongdoing. This is not how we operate at CBSA. Why are you coaching witnesses who've been compelled to attend at a committee to tell the truth? What on earth compelled you to give these suggested answers to them, sir?
Mr. Chair, I was emailed by Mindone a briefing package. I believe it was Wednesday of that week.
Did he ask for your advice on what to say?
He asked me for my help. He wouldn't
Did he
even
ask
call.
your advice on what to say at committee?
He asked me for feedback on his briefing.
I'll ask again. Did he ask your advice on what to say at committee, sir? Yes or no?
Generally, yes. And the reason why I can say that is because his briefing package was just full of facts and data, and it had no verbiage. And he commented to me that he did not have the words to use, which is why I wrote what I wrote.
Did someone coach you on what to say today?
I practiced. Yeah, I did.
No, did someone other than you coach you on what to say?
No.
How about you, Mr. Utano? No? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chouari, please.
Okay, back to Stephanie Kusi, and I'm sure she'll have some questions on what was going on and what was asked.
Why do you believe that Botler was known as the President's Project?
Are you asking me?
Either of you.
I really, so at the very beginnings of it, I had limited to no real exposure to the president on this project, to be honest, quite honest with you. So I don't have an answer for you.
Mr. Macdonald?
This was, the president was seized at the time with the cases of sexual harassment at the CBSA and was trying to do everything that he could to find tools or services to reduce it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Macdonald, you had indicated to the committee that you would be willing to give any documentation necessary for us to get to the bottom of this. I'm asking you both, please, if you would be willing to submit both your calendar as well as meeting invites from the period of January 2019 to June of 2023. If you would please submit those to the committee, please.
Mr. Chair, I have no problems with the CBSA submitting those. I can submit from May 3rd until now when I was at Health Canada, but I don't have access to my calendar from the CBSA.
Okay, thank you. We'll work with the CBSA to obtain those. I wanted to go back to something that my Liberal colleague said, and this was the $54 million price tag. Do you agree with that $54 million price tag? Do you think that this application was worth $54 million?
If you're directing the question to me, I left
Yes.
when ARRIVECAN was at $6.3 million.
Okay.
I believe out of the $54 million, there were things that are outside of IT. $8 million or $7 million went to Service Canada to do things. When I look at the cost over 3 years, I think if you were to look at major IT systems, which I would consider this a major IT system, I would think that it's less expensive than what people are making it out to be. I just want to underline, we know everything that happened now, so it's really easy to rebuild something that's been built. It's called like a model. We didn't have a model to follow when we built ARRIVECAN. They were coming up with things in real time. This started off as a replacement of a piece of paper that cost about $3 each. So
$54 million was a good price, I guess. That's what he's trying to say, right? That's exactly what he's trying to say here. Oh, it was a great price. I left when it was $6 point something million. Well, that could have built the whole app according to everybody else. Like, what do you think? Like, I don't know what these bureaucrats are. This guy's got 23 years, he said, experience, and he's got zero IT, I guess, because like, why wouldn't you just hire somebody if you're doing all these IT projects? Why wouldn't you just hire somebody that knows what they're doing and knows how to price it? Like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Anyway, that's a poor, weak excuse as far as I'm concerned right there. That your knowledge cost us so much money, or your lack of knowledge cost us so much money, the taxpayers. That's unbelievable. Anyway, back to the crap.
when we think about 40 million transactions on ARRIVECAN, I like to think about it as an overall cost savings
But
to
do
the
you
government of Canada.
think the app could have been designed for less money than $54 million?
I think if you had have taken an approach of knowing all of the business requirements when you start, we probably could have saved some money, but we didn't know what the requirements were. We didn't know what waves of the variants were going to be, and we didn't know how to necessarily, well, I'll leave the politics aside. The business requirements came from FAC, and all we were trying to do was streamline the border and get information so that the streamlining of those people crossing the border could be quicker. That was
But
what our
I'm
goal
hearing
was.
you say is that it could have been designed for less money than the $54 million that it was designed for. Did you want to add something briefly, Mr. Utano?
So I would agree with that comment in a normal circumstance and not a pandemic. I think so. And number two, and we were on that trajectory of developing our employees to become autonomous in this capability and these skill sets. But it just takes time. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit as we were trying to establish that. So,
Okay. Yeah, exactly. My $9 million to GC strategies, that money certainly could have been saved there. My last question is, Botler has said, or the principals of Botler have indicated that senior government officials could potentially be receiving kickbacks, both direct kickbacks as well as indirect kickbacks for both ARRIVECAN and potentially other contracts as well. Do you have any direct knowledge about senior government officials, either bureaucratic or elected, receiving any form of kickback?
I have absolutely no knowledge of any senior bureaucrat receiving kickbacks. I can honestly tell you that I have never received one, and I competed for my job, as was opposite to the inference that was made at this committee.
and that's my testimony as well. I'm not aware of anybody who's receiving these sort of kickbacks.
Thank you. With my last time, Chair, I will just briefly ask, where are we at with the witnesses, the PSPC witnesses on Thursday, please?
Just very quickly, we have 3 for Thursday. We are getting a bit of the runaround
Okay.
for having them
Okay.
appear, unfortunately. They verbally have said, but they are refusing
Surprise,
to
surprise.
put it in writing. I suspect that's
What
probably
did
where
you
we're
say,
going.
Mr. Jawari? Yes, thank you.
I suspect.
What
I
a great
suspected
idea,
that.
Mr. Jawari.
Ask committee's permission to leave it with me with the names that I have. Yeah, they agree to be summoned. Perfect.
Do you require me to read anything into the record, Chair?
For yes, sorry, this is the ones for Thursday. We are
Correct.
summoning for
Okay.
Thursday officially.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the names, sorry, I'll just
Yep,
read it off
sure,
because these
please.
are the ones that we have posted. It's Angela Durigan, Anita Chan, Savannah Mensur. That is your time, Mr. Susan. They were just debating that about the witnesses and stuff. They wanted that Doan guy to come by himself, the Conservatives, but the Liberals and the NDP want to interview him with a whole pile of other people there for some strange reason. Can't really figure that one out. But anyway, maybe it's to distract. I don't know. But I'm sure Mr. Doan will have some interesting testimony, no doubt, especially with Larry Brock and Michael Barrett and Garnet Genuis on the other end of the questioning. So anyway, as usual, folks, you be the judge. Or it seems to me like, just in my opinion, that it's the upper echelon trying to blame the lower echelon for making the decision. And it just seems pretty obvious to me. I don't know. There's some people calling other people liars, and especially Cameron. He is Cameron Macdonald. He's really opened up a can of worms here, as far as the real upper echelon of CBSA being a bunch of liars. And yeah, I guess we'll find out with the testimony coming up, because a lot of their testimony doesn't match up with what the evidence says. So just, let's keep it, at least let's keep an open mind here. Let's not hasten our decisions. Let's let the experts ask the questions, and we get to be the judges as far as the public goes. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Please give a like down in the down in the bottom there, and subscribe if you want. Yeah, I'm really enjoying doing this, and I hope you're enjoying it. I'm getting better at it. I was pretty rookie-ish at the beginning, but I'm getting a bit better at it, so a little bit more comfortable and stuff. And I'm editing my own videos now, so at least you don't have to listen to a whole pile of silence while I talk with my microphone off. Anyway, take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you next video.